Fracking has become increasingly controversial ever since its first introduction into New Zealand. Hi, my name is Jared, introductory speaking of Fracking Productions. Through this documentary I hope to show you what fracking actually is and why it is used. I'll be using viewpoints from Sarah, interviewing people from throughout the world to gather opinions, delving into the problems and benefits of its use worldwide, and even in some countries that refuse to expose themselves to its use. The alternatives in order to be able to not use fracking will be explored by environmental planner Rob, who will examine what options we have at our disposal to not have to frack at all. Other members of the team, Nick Smith, will discuss why the method of fracking is controversial, interviewing people from the community asking for their opinions, including some environmentalists and landowners. We will offer concluding arguments to this presentation, giving an overall examination of the controversial method of fracking. In terms of a definition of fracking, petroleum engineers have used fracking as a means of increasing well production since the late 1940s. Fractures can also exist naturally in formations, and both natural and man-made fractures can be widened by fracking. As a result, more oil and gas can be extracted from a given area of land. Induced hydraulic fracturing, or hydrofracking, commonly known as fracking, is a technique used to release petroleum, natural gas, including shale gas, tight gas and coal seam gas, or other substances for extraction. This type of fracturing creates features from a wellbore drilled into a reservoir rock formation. In other words, water and chemicals are shot at high pressure into wells to crack up the rock and in turn gain access to more oil and gas. I have a brief video to visually show this method, giving you a picture of the process involved in fracking.
Fracking is complicated. Oil and gas companies drill into the ground. They take good water, mix it up with not so good stuff, and shoot it into the wells to force out the gas. Wastewater gushes up and gets stored for eventual disposal. All should be good, until trouble finds a way in. A tear finds a way into the lining of a waste pit. Poisonous vapors find a way into your lungs, and cancer-causing chemicals find a way into your glass. Not good at all. But oil and gas companies are fracking more than ever, and the more they frack, the more things find a way to happen. Like the house that exploded, or the animals that died, or the families that got sick. Oil and gas companies say that they have nothing to do with all these things. What they won't say is exactly what chemicals they're using. And they don't have...
You may be asking yourselves, why is fracking used? Proponents of fracking point to the economic benefits from vast amounts of formerly inaccessible hydrocarbons the process can extract. As the world's access to natural resources such as gas and oil is restricted due to overuse of these resources, or them being located in difficult locations, there has been increased pressure to discover methods that gain access to these previously untouchable resources. It's a technique used to extract oil and gas that has once been deemed unconventional, as it has previously been too expensive or difficult to extract. Back to you, Sarah.
This part of the documentary will focus on where fracking is used around the world. Krzysiek from Poland. Well, hello. Fracking is being developed aggressively here, but it is densely populated and has large agricultural sector, meaning the massive amounts of water required for fracking have raised additional concerns. We've now reached the United Kingdom, where it's quite chilly, and where the process of fracking was unofficially suspended for nearly a year, from June 2011, following safety concerns. But in April of this year, the practice was deemed safe and started operating again. We haven't travelled very far, but we've reached Northern Ireland. And here, the Tamborian Resources have claimed that they could supply gas to Northern Ireland for years to come. And the CEO of Tamborian Resources has declared they'll have a zero-chemical hydraulic fracturing pledge. Hello from Holland. In 2012, the first research was begun, where 80% of the underground gas has been commissioned already for extraction. Meanwhile, a critical view is reflected in the national media, and national campaigns against fracking have started. Dobler then, from another European country. In Bulgaria, a number of protests have occurred after the government decided to grant approval to research the possibilities of fracking in the country's northeast in 2011. However, after the nationwide protests in January 2012, the government has decided to ban hydraulic fracking technology. Now we're off to France. Oh, bonjour! In France, there is no problem with hydraulic fracking because in 2011, after public pressure, it was banned. Now we're leaving France and heading south to Australia. In Australia, up until the mid-2000s, hydraulic fracturing was generally limited to conventional oil and gas wells in the Cooper Basin. The New South Wales government has banned BTX chemicals as additives. Oh, I didn't see you there. We're now in Canada, where fracking has been used at the industrial level since the 1990s. Concerns about fracking began in late January 2011. Fracking has received criticism in the New Brunswick and Nova Scotia area, and this practice has been temporarily suspended in Quebec, pending an environmental review. Goeiedag! There was suspension of hydraulic fracking in South Africa's Karoo region, despite the interest of several energy companies. This ban was lifted on the 7th of September 2012. One study has shown that the region of Karoo could hold enough gas to supply South Africa for 400 years. Protests are still being carried out.
In the U.S., fracking was first used in Texas in 1998 and was supported by the Department of Energy and other federal agencies. At present, fracking accounts for 30% of the U.S.'s gas production. Residents that surround sites have complained about pollution, health problems, and the fact that this system of gas extraction has ruined their communities, making this controversial in the states. In May 2012, the state of Vermont outlawed hydraulic fracturing, the first U.S. state to ban the practice. Hydraulic fracturing for the purpose of oil, natural gas, and other geothermal production is exempted under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and the states also...
And now we're heading back to New Zealand from the USA. Now we're back in New Zealand, and hydraulic fracturing is part of the petroleum exploration and extraction on the small scale in the Taranaki region. There is concern has been raised over the environmental issues. And on the 28th of March 2012, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment announced an investigation on the practice of hydraulic fracking.
To get a better idea of the controversial method of fracking, we've brought in ex-Minister for the Environment, Nick Smith. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Fracking is the least of New Zealand's environmental worries. The creation of small earthquakes and pollution to our waterways are concerning much of the public unnecessarily. Yes, there is a possibility that fracking can trigger small earthquakes. However, this is so insignificant when looked at in relation to the 18,000 naturally occurring earthquakes over magnitude 2.5 across the country in a year. Fracking is not the only engineering works that can produce small earthquakes. The construction of foundations for buildings and bridges are also responsible. New Zealanders have more to fear from the vibration of their mobile phones. The risks of fracking contaminating New Zealand's waterways and aquifers are low. The chemicals used in fracking are just fillers. They pose fewer health risks than sand in the family sandpit. I am not saying that fracking is risk-free, but that we are able to manage and minimise the risks. We will continue to ensure wells are properly sealed and that drilling and fracking wastewater is responsibly managed, as well as monitoring ground vibrations. The real risk fracking brings to New Zealand is the reaction of many people who are putting significant economic benefits to our country at risk.
Now we'll cut to real-life people in the community giving their views on the controversial method of fracking.
We're here at Nat's house. Do you think about fracking?
Fracking in New Zealand needs to be banned. The The health and environmental effects caused by the fracking process and chemicals are harmful to our communities. Chemicals are entering our wells and aquifers, contaminating our drinking water. Some people of the community have opted to getting water trucked into their homes in fear of water contamination. There are far too many health effects associated with fracking for it to be considered safe. Even look at this video.
Fracking has come to my community, and now when I want to take a bath or brush my teeth, this is what happens.
Nick Minute.
Look what's happened to my house, and they've only headed for fracking to my community.
Thanks for your opinions, Ellie Webb. Now we'll cut to someone who was so scared from the ramifications of speaking out against fracking that we've had to conceal their identity.
The process is unfair to many landowners who oppose fracking. Landowners who consent to wells on their property receive payments and support. Those who refuse can still get fracked anyway if their neighbours give consent. They frack horizontally up to 1 kilometre. I'm concerned people are jumping into this fracking process without fully understanding the health and environmental consequences.
Thanks for your opinion, Matt. Now, it'd be interesting to see. Show us where they fracked you. With all the different opinions out there on fracking, we sought out 2 planners from Taranaki to discuss with them what should be done about fracking in New Zealand.
I'm Miss Webb, and I am representing all of those planners out there who are pro-fracking. Fracking has been accused of dangerous and harmful activity, but if monitored and regulated correctly, it can be safe and profitable. Companies such as Straterra have worked to spread the truth about fracking and help it shed its negative perception. Regional councils have also been proactive in this effort by altering the consent requirements for fracking and ensuring that it is done appropriately.
So, Miss Webb, what should planners do to promote fracking?
Planners must spread knowledge about healthy fracking practices and must guide society towards recognising that fracking can be safe and beneficial.
Mrs. Webb seemed to make some good points, but Mr. Burgoyne was on the other end of the spectrum.
Simply put, fracking is an activity that should be banned in New Zealand.
If it is so simple, then why has it not been done?
It is estimated that in the Taranaki region alone, there are more than 12 billion barrels of gas available only through fracking. Thus, private companies are very keen to access that and profit from it. Also, not until this year has fracking in Taranaki required a resource consent, and even now consent is still easy to obtain, and the regulations do not make the practice safe by any means. So, fracking can greatly benefit the economy. However, fracking can have devastating effects as it has been linked to causing cancer, and in the States, it caused dairy farms' production to decrease by 18.5% over a 3-year span. This could have devastating effects on New Zealand's long-term economy.
So what can be done to change this?
Well, planners in Taranaki and other regions where fracking occurs must take a deontological and communicative approach to their practices. The local people must be involved in the decisions in their areas and must have a voice. Currently, fracking is benefiting the wealthy oil magnates while the health of community members and the environment suffer. Planners must act ethically and truly consider what is good for their area, and not just for right now, but for the long term and for future generations. Planners should help societies mobilize to sway fracking regulations so that either local governments make obtaining consent harder, or so that the national government bans it altogether. Also, planners must work with all sectors of society. For example, planners should include Fonterra and Federated Farmers in the fight against fracking, based on the grounds that fracking will hurt farm production.
If fracking is banned, what are the current alternatives?
Currently, there are no other methods for retrieving shale gas. However, this is a finite resource anyway, and eventually fracking will become obsolete. There are long-term alternatives out there to fracking, such as developing renewable energy sources and becoming less oil dependent, and more money should be invested in these endeavors and less in fracking.
The issue of whether or not to use hydraulic fracturing techniques is a wicked problem. Currently, there are contradicting views on the practice's risks and how to best manage them. Here in New Zealand, many environmentalists and community members argue that fracking is blatantly harmful and must be banned. It has been said that many overseas companies, such as Canada-based Card Oil, don't care at all about New Zealand and are just here to extract oil at any expense. Also, consent requirements have been very lenient for fracking, and many argue that it must be better regulated. However, the vast amounts of oil that can be obtained through fracking could greatly benefit New Zealand's economy. Therefore, planners must analyze and understand the risks of fracking before allowing the practice to proceed. The knowledge of the pros and cons of hydraulic fracturing are currently too convoluted and varying to know for sure what must be done. However, planners in New Zealand must determine what is best for their regions and must help make New Zealand a better place for now and for the future.